Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid, a podcast that explores the glorious mess of building your own business with the people doing it. I'm your host and fellow business builder, Kim Curtin. Thank you for being here. Let's get into some good, honest, small business chat. If you've started a business, I reckon you've probably made some business friends by now. Maybe it's just one amazing human, or maybe you're lucky enough to have a bunch of business buds. Either way, I reckon it's likely they've propped you up when you've really needed it, given you some advice about something they went through to help you crack on with the chaos that's in front of you, or even just sympathized with how hard this gig can be at times, which is a very important part of keeping us going. The acknowledgement of the hard, the risks we're taking, and how rewarding it can be. And that's exactly what this podcast aims to do for you too. Be the business friend who keeps it real, relatable, encouraging, and a little funny sometimes, because what we do can certainly edge on the ridiculous at times, and a laugh can get us through. And that is exactly what you're going to get today with the glorious Som, who you'll hear about in a sec. And the extra brilliant part is that this show has been there for Som, has been her business friend when she really needed it, which you'll hear about too. And now she's giving right back to tell you her story, all she's doing, all she's learning, and it just fills me with all of the feels. In the sharing of Som's business building story, you're going to hear about starting over in a new country, starting over again from a redundancy, treating a freelance offering as a business from day one and what that means, speaking on stages, shifting from paralysis into action. Oof, that's like a daily one I think I need to think about. Building a savings account of trust and reliability with yourself over time, the deadlines that push us forward, and the brutal creative process of building a keynote. Let's get into it. I'm here with Som Puri, who is crafting an impressive solopreneur business as an in-demand copywriter and keynote speaker. On the copywriting side, she works with retail brands and their standout products, crafting market positioning and a message that's impossible to ignore. She also works with founders ready to step into the all-important personal brand limelight and businesses looking to nurture a community through seamless messaging and tone of voice. Her words have been crafted for Radical Yes, an amazing brand and future guest on this very show, and Kmart, Sheet Society, and Adair's, amongst others. On the speaking side of her business, she's a 2024 TEDx speaker delivering keynotes and workshops about the agency we all have in creating a personal narrative that feels powerful. Now, while I usually craft these intros myself from a variety of sources, this next bit I'm going to borrow directly from you, Som, as the words need to be shared as they are. Som says, "For a long time, I was violently embarrassed about being socially awkward, which in turn made me more socially awkward, which made me hide myself and feel bitter and unseen. These days, it's a very important part of my life. I'm a sometimes socially awkward person who speaks to rooms full of people. I speak about the power of creating a great personal narrative that feels aligned to who you really are. And this includes the non-linear and messy parts of your story that might feel uncomfortable to show at first, but if you lean in, can be the very things that make you both memorable and inherently confident simultaneously." With realness like that, you are very much in the right place, Som, for a chat about your business building and the personal growth through entrepreneurship experience. Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid.
Thank you so much, Kim. It's so nice to be here. I've listened to the podcast forever, so it's an absolute joy to be here chatting to you.
Oh, I absolutely love that. I do also love, thank you very much. I love your story of listening to a particular episode whilst having a shower cry. I hope you don't mind me sharing that. I've been there.
Absolutely. So I was having one of those moments in my business where it was just a really, really hard phase, a week, a month. I don't know how long it had been, but the needle was kind of stuck and I just needed a shower to get out of it. I went and I did this too hot shower, which I typically tend to do just to feel alive again. And I came out in my towel. I was in my room. I had the little space heater on and I was like, that's it. I'm quitting or I'm listening to Kim. And just then you had published the episode about don't quit just before the magic happens. So I sat there in my wet towel with my dripping wet hair and listened to all of it and nodded furiously without anyone really watching. And it was just the thing that picked me up. And for countless such moments, Unemployed and Afraid has just been with me. So yeah, it's like a business partner almost at this stage.
Oh, I'm so honored to be your business partner. And I know the very experience. I too favor a boiling hot shower just to like really make myself feel alive when I feel like I'm about to crack. So I'm very much that person as well who will sit there on the bed in the towel being like, why can't I just get dressed and keep going here? Why am I having such a moment? And I think business building, we all have that experience. We all have those doubts. I'm definitely right in the middle of one at the moment myself. So I'm really, really glad to hear that you were able to push through that and come out the other side. I'm sure it'll happen again. That's just what we do. Let's just be realistic about it. But I'm really happy to be supporting you through it and to hear all about your journey today and how it's going, because that's what it's all about. It's just keeping going and keeping pushing and building, sharing all those learnings. But before we get into your business, I want to know about your best friend and how they might describe you.
My best friend would describe me as somebody who's fiercely loyal. And I also can be very, very funny. Like I can be in the past, I used to be a really guarded person. But the people closest to my life would see me do like really funny walks or really funny impressions of people. And that would be it would be the secret little thing that I would reserve only for my best friend or the people closest to my life. But more and more as I have matured, I am more comfortable with showing those parts of me to more people. So I would say alarmingly funny, loyal, and my best friend always likes my style. So I think she would say stylish.
I'm going to try really hard to pull out some of these impressions from you and get some of these on the show because, it's if we don't laugh through some of this stuff we go through. Before this version of you, though, there's this version who is backing herself and is, stepping into that power, building her copywriting and keynote speaking business. What were you doing? Who were you? What was happening?
I started my career as a television presenter many years ago in a very bustling city of Mumbai. I was at the start of my career, early 20s, and I had this amazing job for 5 nights a week. I would present a TV show live. I would go out on the streets, collect the stories, and do the reporting myself, come back, log those tapes, listen to those tapes, look at the tapes, log the tapes, and then host the show live. Back when I started, they didn't like my curly hair. So every night it would be ironed out straight for the show because people wouldn't take curly haired people seriously is what I was told. So every day I would straighten my hair, go up there and do that show. It was so swelteringly hot in Mumbai. So on the top, I would have like a blazer and and the bottom it would be shorts. So that was like a really key memory for me. And from media, then I moved on to the pace of life in Mumbai was just, I would spend maybe 3/4 of my money on rent. And then it was just a little too crazy. So eventually I moved over to copywriting. And somewhere in my 30s, I moved to Australia, which is where we moved with my husband's job. And when I came here, I was a pretty established professional in India. But coming here, I was completely lost. I was so different and I felt so different. I wouldn't say that I was different, but I felt so alarmingly different. And I tried to start my career back up here again, but I faced a lot of, I remember when I first moved here, in that first week, we were in a service department. I had to look for apartments to move into. We were in Brisbane. I remember picking up the phone to talk to a real estate agent, and I'm there with the phone's ringing. My heart is beating, and I know he's going to pick up and he's going to have an Australian accent, and I don't have an Australian accent. So it was just, and he picks up, and I put the phone down immediately because I'm scared of him. I'm sure he's going to be scared of me. It's just, I just couldn't have the conversation of I'm looking for an apartment. But that was essentially where I started copywriting back in Australia, started to take far more lower skill jobs, primarily, I think, because of the story I was telling myself. You're new here, you're not up to speed. People have gone to uni here. The slang is different. There's so many different things that might not be the same as what you bring to the table. So I started with copy. So that's where my journey started in the writing world in Australia.
What an experience to go through. It's, I almost want to like reach through the screen and give you a hug about that because, I can imagine just in that moment, trying to restart your life somewhere new and
Yeah.
facing that fear of acceptance or non acceptance or, just starting again. And those stories that we tell ourselves so often, I think it's a really generous share. And I wish that wasn't the experience that you had. And I wish that you were able to come feeling confident and powerful because you're so wonderful. So yeah, I'm sorry to hear that you had that experience.
And it also, I think, comes for a large part from what you tell yourself internally. I feel like when I see, for instance, if I was back in India and there was a person, say, from Australia or I don't know, Norway, and they had a different accent that didn't match mine, it would just endear them more to me and would make them more memorable or more special or would make me more curious about them. So, which is why I kind of do the work I do, because I think the personal stories we tell, the little narratives we build in our brains and then constantly tell ourselves play such a big role in how we show up in the world, what doors we knock on, what opportunities we put our hands up for. So I think it plays such a big part. And just having some tools about how to construct a more powerful story for ourselves can be the change from me now not necessarily picking up the phone to speak to a real estate person, but standing up on stage and speaking to so many different people, so many different accents, and being completely okay about it.
Mm. I think we could all pay to place a little bit of context to anybody outside of us and the things that are being experienced for that individual. My partner often says it's the sign of a good human when somebody can get out of their own headspace and think about what the person on the other side of the phone call, the conversation, the job application, the whatever is experiencing. Like that's the sign of a good
Absolutely.
person. And we should all take a little bit more time to consider that no matter who we're speaking with. We all have a story, right? So tell me a little bit about getting yourself into freelancing and getting your career going and just kind of how that happened because I find it really interesting that with that incredible presenting experience, like wow, that must have taught you so much that isn't
Yeah.
something that you went into, that freelancing copywriting kind of became your world. Like how did you get started and what did that experience teach you?
I have always relied on words for all of my life, I think. Growing up at about 5 years old, I used to have a little notebook that I would write little stories and poetry. And it was always that little place that made me feel safe and just gave me the freedom to express myself really clearly. And since I had been doing it from such a young age, I was really good at it. So when I came here, that's the thing that I relied on because that's the thing that requires least amount of like prep and build up and hype for me because I'm naturally really, if I may say so, like skilled at it. So I got there doing something that I'm really comfortable with, writing. And one thing led to another, and I started working with really good brands. But at some stage in a brand that I was having a lot of fun with, I was sat down and told that my role was being made redundant. And it's not a really great feeling, although the company and the brand handled it beautifully. It sort of brings up a lot. Like, why me? Why was I singled out? And it's helpful to see that it's not you, it's your role. And the experience I had was beautiful with that particular company. But when I left, I feel like I had a moment of why am I doing the roles that might not be perfectly suited for me from a skills perspective? Why am I why am I going below what I can actually offer? And I started taking up freelancing roles and fractional roles. And I saw that I could bring a lot more of my superpower and my perspective and also a much better financial positioning. And I didn't want to just see myself as a freelance copywriter, but a business owner now. I didn't want to been in a firm being a small fry copywriter with no ambition to be like a manager or like a director. That wasn't my ambition. So what was I working towards? But moving on my own and setting up like a one-person business, sitting down and breaking down my goals, like what do I want this business to look like? So I want to do copy work, which I do. I want to do essays and longer form opinion pieces, which I have also started doing. That's where I feel the best doing. And I feel like that's where my brilliance will shine, is in those essay pieces. And then also doing speaking work. So these were the three sort of wings within my business that I wanted to sort of fan these flames. And that's where I started intentionally taking action towards these specific areas of my life. I applied for TEDx. I got through. I pitched myself in a room full of, I don't know, it was, I think, close to 300 people. And there was I got shortlisted. I made the cut. So I was showing myself these little signs of friendship and trust and giving myself reason to believe in myself. And then I was being rewarded because when I was taking all these actions, things were then falling into place. What we would call falling into place, but actually it is the actions.
First of all, you almost dropped the most brilliant slang in there. So I think you've underestimated your use of Australian slang.
Which one was it?
I think you were about to say punching below your weight and you said
yes.
punching. But I really, really love the share about the non-linear thinking in the structure of a business. I think there's a lot of people who will find themselves in the position, who have found themselves in the position this year in a role redundancy in a creative media, marketing, advertising world. There has certainly been a lot of role redundancies, and I'm sure we will see more over the years as everything is changing, consolidating, lots of things are going on. And, just that almost that forced shift in thinking is really so powerful to be able to go, okay, hang on a minute. I have more options than what I can see. What is it that I want to do? And I think that's such an important takeaway from your share there, to go, yes, when you're in a role, and particularly when you're in a role at a place you really like, doing some cool work, but maybe don't see what feels right for you in the role up, the role to the side, whatever it is, you don't see any of that. I think the natural place to go is into, okay, well, let me just do more of what I'm doing, but let me freelance so I can work with more clients, so I can do this. That's a really fantastic option. But to push it one step further and go, let me set this up as a business entity and let me have multiple revenue streams within this that are allowing me to be passionate and to explore things and kind of let them grow. That's a really powerful way to look at it. It's a very uncomfortable journey, which I want to hear more about from your perspective, but figuring out all of the steps within that and how to take those steps while also getting paid and putting food on the table and paying for rent and mortgages and things like that. Pretty intense. So, I want to get into, I guess, a little bit of that for you, that feeling of, now I know what it is I want to do. I've got these streams, and then sitting down and going, okay, what steps do I have to take to get to freelancing, or into bringing into business and copywriting, into getting opinion pieces commissioned or accepted into speaking? How did you manage the steps and also the uncertainty of income?
It was a really tricky, I think, phase of my life. This was at end of 2022, start of 23, which is when I got made redundant, took on a really beautiful contract in terms of a fractional copywriting, senior copywriter role. Once that was done, I had decided that I'm not going to pursue full-time employment, at least for a while, and back myself through this journey. And then I just waited. I was like, okay, these clients who worked with me in the past, are you going to come knocking at my door, or do you want to work with me? But I wasn't saying this out loud. I was just sitting with it and just sitting really still, because I thought that if I sat really still, I would be noticed. I don't know what I was thinking, but I was really frozen. And I remember this one day really clearly, it was gloomy in Melbourne. That's something that I do struggle with. And so it was one of those gloomy days. I was sitting there. It had reached 1 p.m. And I was giving myself a hard time in my head about how nothing is really working in the direction I wanted to go. And then typically when that reaches to a point where I can't take it anymore, I will go to the gym, or I will go for a run. I will move my body. And I have this beautiful gym near my house, which is now my safe space. So through that sort of storm that was happening inside my head, I put on my runners and out the door I went. And I went for a really sweaty workout, which it brings up the endorphins, it brings up that, and then you can go from there. And then I just sort of had to strategize about, how do I do this? I cannot just sit here and wait for the business to happen to me. And then came the scary part about putting those actions into place, whether it was talking about myself on LinkedIn, whether it was creating a really good website, whether it was collecting testimonials from people. That was absolutely so frightening. And I don't know why, because everybody was lovely. The people that I've worked with gave me the best testimonials. And just putting your energy behind your goals can feel really scary, and also is a place that brings up a lot of self-doubt. At least for me, I struggle with limiting beliefs. I always have. And even now, I will occasionally struggle with the voice that says, okay, this is not something that you can get. This is not something for you. And it is sort of now the thing that I have is that awareness about that piece. So I worked with, I don't know if you know this, but Small Businesses Victoria has this really great mental health program for starting businesses. So I worked with that program with a beautiful therapist who I met with. It's a free program. They have, I think, 6 or 7 sessions. They'll see you every week, and it's an amazing resource for small business owners. So that got my limiting beliefs it's if you imagine a circle and a line running down the center, everything on top is what you're aware of, and everything below is what you're not aware of, but you're telling yourself this constantly. So it brought some of those things from beneath that line up, and I could then see the stories, the limiting beliefs that I've been telling myself, and work towards all these particular actions. Sometimes it was pitching to brands. Oh, that was just like absolutely petrifying. But then I got so many great contracts, commissions, work from there. I started speaking, I started writing. And as I was doing that, I was building like this sort of like savings account of trust and reliability with myself. So anytime I wanted to then apply or pitch for something, I would go into that savings account, take a little bit of trust outside, and then use that to then knock on another door or apply for another opportunity, go to a networking event. And it's a circle that keeps giving.
It is such a circle that, first of all, I mean, that mental health, in business through that government organization, wow, I need to find them immediately, and they need to know about this podcast and they need to support it because it's exactly what we're all about. And I also need to be sharing that link, with whoever I can, and hopefully finding more of those around at least the country, of Australia, and seeing what is out there, because that journey is so important. You can have the best business idea in the world and not be able to move on it because of the stories that we tell ourselves through the personal growth that we still need to do, that sometimes we're not willing to face. My therapist describes kind of like the experience of bouncing. This is me just sharing my personal therapist notes. It's just very personal. But it's very much like there's that kind of like that comfortable space in the middle, that beautiful space where you're working and you're feeling pretty confident. And then there's things that happen that push you down into that freeze or fawn. And that can be, oh God, I don't know, this is another new thing that I need to do. This feels overwhelming. If I do this one pitch, is it going to go anywhere? And then what happens? So I need to write it first. What do I need to do that? Just even that aspect of it specific to your world and sometimes mine. And then, being able to bounce back into that kind of middle zone. And then that other type where we're in that fight or flight, where we're like almost frantically like doing a million tasks at once and feeling like it has to happen now. And if it doesn't happen now, it's, oh my God. It's just that like trying to increase that window of tolerance in the middle. Absolutely. Where you can just take one step towards the next thing that you want to do. And I love that you've got that perspective on it and those tools to, we do also, we have those messages, we get those emails, we get not at first, maybe in brand new in our business, but if we can find those examples where we have succeeded well, even if it's in previous roles, to remind ourselves what we're capable of, just to be able to keep ourselves going. And movement, like, such any kind of movement, such an important way to shift that energy, because I don't know about you, but I can sit at this very spot, at this very desk. I could sit here for 16 hours a day and just spin my wheels, email here, research here. Oh, maybe I need to learn this. Oh, let me just start this little project. Oh, let me just, this piece of content, I'll do some editing or, no matter what it is, you can just sit there all day long. And then what happens is all of that energy that you have about your goals just starts to internalize and like just spin around in your head, and you just can't do anything. Like you've just articulated it so perfectly.
And you get so exhausted and you just get in your head.
Naked.
And that exhaustion is really real. And I find that in the past, a lot of my exhaustion was internalized. I remember there was this job I did in Perth. It was a copywriter at a design agency. And I spent so much of my time there like I was fairly new. I was about 1 year or 1.5 year into the country, and I was spending so much of my time being really like perfect and like just doing all the things and just being my face a certain way, my voice a certain way. I remember coming home and sitting in my balcony for 1 hour straight from exhaustion. It's so exhausting just being somebody else or doing the things that make you seem perfect and like the perfect fit for something, or it's just absolutely so exhausting. And you start to like hold your jaw. I start to hold my jaw a certain way and it'll just be like really tight, or my words don't sound like myself anymore. And I think you sort of betray yourself in a way. So when you come back and you sit there and you're like, what have I been doing my whole day? So yeah, those exhaustion pieces are real. And those pieces of like getting your body moving is an absolute game changer for me. Also, just walking away from my desk from time to time, taking a proper lunch break, these kind of things. Like when you work for yourself, like you said, you can spend so many hours on your desk, writing or virtual. And both these spaces are very like in your head spaces. So it's really key to like put yourself out of that environment every now and again. That's why I also love to speak in addition to my writing, because that brings me into my body. And it's just very freeing for a writer to be able to like use their body in some way.
You're so right. The exhaustion I get sometimes just from writing a LinkedIn thought leadership post is like, how am I so fucking, excuse my language, tired? Like all I've done is, I've woken up, gone to work, gone to my desk and written this.
Yeah.
Like, why am I so knackered? But yeah, there's a lot of personal battles. There's like a lot of little mini Kims and mini Soms and mini listeners, fighting each other. You have segued me beautifully because I really want to touch on your TEDx experience. You said before pitching live your story, I mean, your idea worth spreading, I guess is the perfect way to say it, but your keynote. Wow, that must have been terrifying. Can you take me through the process of refining your keynote first and foremost? I mean, the crafting it and then the experience of pitching it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was around the time at the end of 2022 when I was beginning to put my actions like behind my goals, and I knew that I wanted to speak, and I saw the call out a day before it closed.
Oh,
I saw it on a Friday. It was going to close on a Saturday.
Can I just say, honestly, Som, this happens to me so often where I say, why do these things come up? Like the first time I entered into the Australian Podcast Awards, I was like, oh, early bird pricing finishing like tomorrow. I was like, oh, fuck, of course it's tomorrow. Now I have to stay up all night and do this. It is all the time. Listener, if this happens to you, please message me about this, because I don't know if it's some weird universe thing just to fuck with us so that we have to do it. But yes, I am.
And it's like a tiny little fire is lit up under my bum. And then it's like, come on, get to it right away.
Yes.
So it was Saturday morning. I packed my partner and my child away and told them to like go to a playground, give me a few hours, have lunch, and then come back. So I sat down there, put all I knew it, like I knew my ideas. It was about why we need to start telling better stories about ourselves. I knew this idea. It wasn't crafted in such a tight little sentence, but I knew it. So I sat there and I decided to get out of my way, and it's fine if I'm not perfect. Like I'm giving this a shot. If I don't make it, I don't make it. What have I got to lose? So I put all my thoughts there. I was there for a few hours until they got back from the park. I put the whole pitch down and I sent it away. One of the key things I did is not try to make it perfect, because I can just sit and fuss and tinker. It's like making that like pasta sauce, and it needs extra salt, it needs extra cream. I can just get really, and then it'll be disgusting by the end of it. So I didn't want to make my pasta sauce disgusting. So I just went with what I've got. And they really liked it. They got back into, and another annoying thing happened. On Sunday, they extended the deadline by another 3 days, which I was like, oh my God, I did all of that and it got extended. So anyway, they loved it, and they said they got back in touch with me for next steps. And the next steps was to stand up on stage in a room of maybe 300 people or so and put your pitch down to 2 minutes. And go up on stage and convince people about your idea, but in 2 minutes. So I went and I did that. And it was a lot of talking to myself in the mirror. It was a lot of hyping myself up. I got into this this song by Sia, Unstoppable. I would play it all the time. And my daughter would be like, Mom, are we listening to Sia again? And I was like, yes, it's my hype song. So I did that. I got that 2-minute pitch out, and it really brought my TV presenter side out. I was enjoying it. I was like, oh my God, I haven't sort of been in touch with this part of myself. This feels absolutely exhilarating. And one thing that I do not have is stage fright. So I wasn't scared of like going up there and talking, which is weirdly funny for somebody who more or less is an introvert. I love being like in smaller groups or by myself. I'd relish it. So going up there, talking and not really having stage fright is like a beautiful side to my introversion that I love. So my main limiting beliefs were around crafting that idea, but I did that. I went up on stage, saw the sea of faces and delivered it, and was told that I was selected. And then it was a lot of unglamorous work of actually writing it out. Sometimes it feels like I was sitting there with a bull sitting right next to me, telling me all sorts of things, distracting me, telling me this is shit, or telling me that this is not going to be great. There are so many more better people than you. What are you even trying to do? It was constantly wrangling that bull, but also writing, but also wrangling it. But it's that constant sort of idea that there's so many more better qualified people, or there's so many more people who will be better on stage. Like, what are you doing? So it was constantly retelling that story while writing about retelling your story. So it was a lot of hard work that it just shows as somebody up on stage, but in the background, it is like putting my washing up to dry and practicing my speech, or like doing the dishwasher and doing, oh, this is a great point to add into my speech. So it's a lot of little tasks that led me there finally.
What an important share that you've just given. I think so many of us have the ambition to start a podcast, write a book, do a talk, do numerous talks, to launch something. But I'll stay with the premise of creating something, of like crafting a piece of work that's embedded in words, and that's embedded in ideas and creativity that comes from your heart and soul. So many have that ambition, and then it feels like a huge mountain to climb. And I love that you've just described that. That's because it is. Something has happened in perhaps since ChatGPT, which I have no shade on whatsoever, can be a great creative partner sometimes, or, something to like just help you with the block. But I think for some reason, maybe it's that people think that they'll be able to get to, or the experience of getting to an idea or getting something out is going to be easier than it is. But it is really painful sometimes. And if you are so focused on that end goal and having it be done and having it be shared with the world, I feel like I'm giving myself therapy here, but you don't like go through those times where you just sleep on an idea, where you start with one sentence, where you sit at the screen for 3 hours and write 4 words and hate them. And, just that experience that you cannot take that out of the process. It doesn't mean you're bad at writing. It doesn't mean you're bad at preparing a talk. It doesn't mean your idea isn't good. It's just a process. Like that, desire to have it done, and I'll be able to smash out this opinion piece, and it's in my heart already. I'll just get it out. Sometimes, we do channel an idea and some things can come out, but more often than not, it is a million outputs and inputs that generate this and make this a body of work. So I'm really glad that you shared that experience of adding to your keynote while you're doing the washing, because that is the reality of how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And they are the steps that sort of lead you. Like you said, you might do 4 words that you hate, and you might be tempted to think that I wasted my whole morning. But that isn't really the case. You've done some important mind work, mind mapping, or for the very least, you've figured out the 4 words that you hate. So it's just sort of framing what you've done into a context of this is important in the bigger picture of what I'm trying to do. If I didn't look at it like that, some days would feel like I'm just doing nothing, but I am doing important work in moving towards my goal, moving my business forward, doing little business habits. Like if it was finding a great Instagram ad of a brand that is trying to like advertise to me, but then I'm like, okay, this is a great brand that I would love to write for. Maybe I'll make a note of it in my little document and see if I can like chat with them like sometime during in the next few weeks. So every little quiet moment is important too. And it's just how we frame it, really.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Business is made up of a million tiny, tiny, tiny little things. And I think that's what frustrates so many of us through the process is from the outside, it looks like have an idea, launch an idea, get some wins on the board, talk about the wins, continue going with the idea. And that might be what it looks like to somebody who's not actually in it. But then you realize it's so much of sitting in quiet and taking tiny steps and beating yourself up for feeling like, well, what did I even achieve today? But you have to be able to zoom out. You have to be able to take the hits. You have to be able to be invisible for a really long time to be able to do that work that people see.
Yeah. And also within my full-time roles, it was those 8 hours on the clock, which was completely accounted for. So it felt like I was doing a lot in those 8 hours. There was the meetings, there was the sitting back and doing a prezzo, or then writing things down, or there was something constantly scheduled into those 8 hours by someone else, sort of who was on top of you in the pyramid. But here you are the pyramid, you are the base of the pyramid, you're the top of the pyramid, you're the whole Egypt. So you have to make it sort of, there may be sort of moments in there that look like they're quiet. You might not be in a meeting, you might not be presenting to like a room full of people, but you're still doing the small little business habits that are moving you forward, that aren't glamorous, so to speak, but very important nevertheless.
So, how has doing your TEDx talk and being on the stage and getting to that eventual big moment, how has that influenced your business? What has it done for your business?
I think it has, in a lot of ways, deepened. The main thing I think doing that is it's deepened that friendship with myself. I feel like I backed myself. I got out there, and I got these beautiful validation from myself and from the people in the audience who I eventually like spoke to. It gave me that sort of. I saw myself, and I saw that this is an area that I am good at, and I will be doing a disservice to myself if I'm not pursuing it. So I pursued it actively. I did a few more speaking gigs. I'm doing a few more. Just being in the area of doing something you want to do sort of pads you up and gives you a lot more lubrication. It makes you a lot more supple, and you're like, okay, I can do this. And so I did this beautiful talk with Generation Women after that, where I spoke about, again, storytelling from the perspective of hiding yourself versus showing yourself. And one of the things that I absolutely love doing is bringing a sort of slice of stand-up humor, stand-up comedy to my talks. So with the Generation Women one, I was able to sort of weave in stand-up comedy. I spoke about going gray, starting my gray hair come in, and I spoke about how through my younger days, I worked so hard on sort of hiding bits and pieces of myself just to appear really perfect. But I have decided not to really color my grays because it gives me a really uncomfortable throwback to hiding myself. And right now, I refuse to hide any parts of myself. So this was a fairly heavy topic, but I brought in humor, I brought in lightness. And just after the talk, I feel like there are so many people that came up and spoke to me, not necessarily everybody going gray, but everybody having an experience of something that they're so tempted to hide, that they think that if I hide this, I will appear perfect and everybody will love me. But I think the real gold is leaning into those imperfections and those messy little bits that we feel self-conscious about, and sort of letting that inform our narrative. And that essentially becomes your superpower. It becomes what holds you apart. It's what makes you memorable. So what the talk did for me is just gave me that permission slip to do more and ask for more and blatantly go and claim the prize.
Take me a little practical with one thing, because I think, we all kind of look at this, anyone who's got ambitions to speak will look at this and be like, how the bloody hell do you actually get gigs? Like how it is like a dark art. You've got people signed up to speaking bureaus, to talent agencies. You've got people who just appear to be able to generate incoming requests for talks, and it just seems to happen. And it just seems like a dark art, not to mention the art of pricing as a speaker as well, and putting a dollar figure on this. I'm sure there's plenty of places out there that are willing to hire a speaker for nothing. How are you tackling both of those things? How are you finding gigs, pitching, getting gigs? How are you pricing?
One of the important things I think with finding gigs is two-pronged. One is literally asking for it, pitching yourself, or if you're talking like my main social media is by LinkedIn. So while I'm on LinkedIn, it is sort of woven into my strategy to every so often talk about what I offer in no uncertain terms, not just wishy-washy, just say it out in perfectly formed sentences. This is what I offer. This is what I'm looking for. If that's something you're looking for as well, it would be great to work together. Please get in touch, DM or email. Just not being ambiguous about it at all. It's sort of, I think it was culturally within me to sort of just allude to it, but not actually say it. But no, now I actually say it. This is what I want. I will put it into motion. The other thing is that I will do is I will speak at events that even if it is not for a fee, that I'm passionate about. It might not be for everything. It might not be for an event that's costing like hundreds of dollars at the gate to get in, but not pay their speakers. I won't do that. But if it is an organization about multicultural women, for instance, I will go there and I will speak about it because it matters to me. And also, I will see what the audience is that I'm speaking in front of. And if they're absolutely valuable for me as connections, then I will go there and I will speak for a reduced cost, so to speak, if the organization, like I said, isn't charging many thousands or hundreds of dollars at the gate to get in. Another thing that I will do is network. I will network virtually. I will send out requests. I will start conversations, not necessarily selling myself, but I will chat to people. I will broaden my network. I will be curious. I will ask questions and I will give my opinions and my perspective as well. And I will also go to as many networking events as sort of fits within my strategy and within my areas. I will go there and I will no longer be quiet. I used to go there and be quiet, just telling myself the story that, oh, you're an introvert. What are you going to say? Your story isn't that interesting, is it? But now, no, my story is interesting. I will contribute. I will take up space and I will give space. So these are the few things I do towards getting the gigs. Yeah. And with pricing, it is a hit and miss for sure. Like sometimes you get it right. Sometimes I have done gigs that, like I said, that is for a cause that I absolutely believe in and that I will do because it might empower somebody who would have been in my shoes at some stage in their life. Or if it is a gig that I am pricing for, I will try my best to price without undercutting myself. Because when you're starting out, it's so easy to undercut yourself and to think that, okay, this might not be a great number, but I will price in a way that doesn't undercut myself, but I will leave room for conversation.
I think that's a really important approach, looking at your experience and what you can offer and what you've seen in the market and all of those many, many data points that we have around pricing, but then just looking back on it and going, okay, would I feel happy with this? Do I feel like I can shoot my shot here? Should I bring this back? Should I bring this back because I do really want to do it? And I think language is such an important part of that. Jazz, who I've had on this podcast before, the pricing queen, she has a lot to say about this. And I just love it in terms of, finding your ins and being able to have certain conversations in certain ways that maintain your power, but also your openness. She's definitely one to check out. I'm sure you've probably heard her or heard me talking about her.
Absolutely. I've met her too. Yeah, she's amazing.
She's a good egg. So where do you want to take your self-employment business game to? What is on the cards for you?
Yeah, I have thought about this quite a bit. What I would love for it to be on the cards for me is to travel with my speaking. Like I feel like I've been in these full-time writer roles before I started my business. And writing typically doesn't get you to travel. And travel is one of my, the things that I have on my sort of business goals sheet, so to speak. So I would love to travel with my speaking work. I would love to also speak at, like I said, those sort of events that might not be able to pay their speaker. They might not be glamorous, but they might be doing important work that I want to contribute towards. I want to do more copywriting with great brands that are really aligned with something like for instance, go to, like Zoe Foster Blake and go to, like I would love to write for them someday, like speaking of bucket list brand. And I would love to do more opinion pieces and just weave in business habits like pitching and more. Like I've done pretty well on that front in 2024, but up that game and continue to put those business habits and separate myself from those business habits just so it's easier to do. Like when you go into work, you do some business habits for another business. I come into work, I do those business habits for my business.
That's it. We have to show up for ourselves. And I really love your approach. My next question to close our chat would normally be, how can the listener and I support you? But before I ask that, I'm going to say outright, if anyone knows Zoe Foster Blake or has a connection to her business who is listening to this, make a connection, please. Like, let's try and make this happen for each other. I'm constantly saying to people I network with or chat, what can I do for you? Who can I introduce you to? Like, we have to do more of that. And this, community of business owners, like we are the ones who can lead it. It is never about competition. It is never at the expense of yourself and your own goals and your own achievements. Like it comes back in spades if we need another reason to do it. But yes, if you know Zoe Foster Blake or have a connection to her company, please get in touch with me if you can't find Som or directly with Som, and let's just make this happen for you. That'd be so incredible. But how else can we support you? What can we do for you?
Well, the main way of, I guess, connecting with me is on LinkedIn. So connect with me. Let's chat. Let's meet. If you're in Melbourne, if you're in Australia, let's catch up, and just globally as well. If anyone's listening that would like to connect, LinkedIn is one of my main places where I show up, and I show up consistently. And yeah, it would be nice to open out my networks. And like you said, that's such a beautiful thing, Kim. Like, what can I do for you? Just asking that question to someone is so powerful. If someone asked me that in an event, or like you did right now, it's just so powerful. And it's such a great way to connect to someone.
And it actually makes you feel a lot better as a business owner, because most days we feel pretty average. Just in reality, it actually just helps for a moment to be like, let me get out of my own head and in my own storytelling about what I can and can't do, and let me just make it about somebody else for a minute. It's actually a really nice reset for us as a practice, as business owners and business builders, to be able to just ask that question and follow up and do those things. It actually is a bit of a relief, I find. So if we need any other reason to do it. So it has been so wonderful to chat with you today. I love your sharing on LinkedIn, and I love everything that you've shared today. I think it's hugely valuable to the listener to be able to take away. And perhaps if somebody is sitting there in a towel after a scalding hot shower and needing a little bit of inspiration to keep showing up for themselves and keep building the business of their unique dreams, I think that might just be the thing that they need to hear. So thank you so much for sharing it with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Kim. It's been an absolute pleasure to do this.
Thank you for listening to Unemployed and Afraid, the podcast for small business builders with your host, me, Kim Curtin. If you love it, you can say thanks with a star rating and a review. And of course, join the community on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Find us at Unemployed and Afraid wherever you're hanging out, and I'll see you there.